Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lights right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steve Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hey there, and welcome to the Pun Show. Hope you're having a splendiferous day. There is actually some good news, and I, want to give some credit where it's due. They allegedly have found the pipe bomber, and right now they're having a fellatio contest on how much to give each other credit for it. But credit where it's due, they found the guy. It was not at the forefront of my concern, and it doesn't seem to be anything related to what they thought it would be, which was some massive FBI cover-up. But still, they got the guy, so give them credit for that. And there was Admiral Bradley had some... They talked to him about the boat strikes and all of that, and he's apparently covering for them. But I think that there's this kind of ridiculous notion that they were somehow going to attack us with a blown up boat of cocaine. I have questions, and so do some people that want to see the video. So I don't think that's the end of all things. One thing I found interesting is Hosley, that nobody's been talking about this, but there was this article that came out on the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and he resigned on the same day that the other two survivors were rescued. So you heard all these justifications about, well, why weren't these other two survivors, why were they rescued if these first two were blown up? Which is like saying, well, Charles Manson couldn't have murdered anybody because he didn't murder everybody. Like, there were people he'd let go, well, whatever. So just on that front, I don't think that's the final word. I don't think that should put everything to rest. I think, and even there's still all kinds of qualifications about whether the first strikes were even valid, which I don't think they are, and most legal experts don't. You don't just get to say somebody is a terrorist and then kill them because you said they're a terrorist. Trump said so is not enough justification for killing people. And God forbid we live in a world where people start saying it is. So anyway, that is not the primary focus of today's show. Just want to Quetzal, I guess that's how you say it. Anyway, he says hi. So hi, Quetzal. Today, I want to spend some time arguing with MAGAs is such a frustrating thing, because MAGAs never seem to argue honestly. And they, so you'll block them because you just realize, like after 2 tweets, that there's never going to be anywhere you're going to go with this person in terms of honest discourse. And I do like to, I just gave credit where it was due, right? Like, I will give credit where it's due. I will be convinced by facts. I can change my mind. I can learn. But with some of these people, it's like no matter what happens, they refuse to accept new information. They refuse to learn. They refuse to acknowledge actual logical points, and they just start moving on. So I want to talk. I got to just thinking about this, and I asked some people some questions on Twitter, and I was going to just do a top 10 list of the dumbest arguments, and I ended up deciding, it's more about the thinking, because there's multiple examples of each kind of fallacy they love to use. So I put together a slideshow. Hi, Kitty. I put together a slideshow of the 10 most common MAGA fallacies. They're not actually the most common. These are just 10 that I could think of. And I tweeted out, and posted out on Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook and whatnot, to ask for, like what you're sick of hearing. So a lot of the feedback I got from that are embedded in this. And anyway, if you want to share it with your MAGA friends and family, then you can. But this is just wanted to really discuss about the logical dishonesty of MAGAs and how to expose that. I shared this slideshow in the link for, for all the for YouTube. It's in the description. For Twitter, it's in the thing in the tweet, and in Threads and Blue Sky. You can find it on the YouTube description. On Facebook, you can find it in the description. So anyway, what does MAGA mean? Make America great again. It means, people that believe in that philosophy, whatever it is. So anyway, let's start diving into this. The first thing is they always love to say whatever is, and then they'll have an insult. And this is called an ad hominem attack. And that's a logical error where you attack a person's character, motive, or other attributes instead of addressing their argument. And this one is very, very common. And it's also very, very just obtuse. And I just wanted to include this one because it's so ubiquitous. And like a good example of this is Sleepy Joe, right? Like, it's just taking a smear, and it's never accompanied with a actual logical thing. It's not like, well, Joe Biden was sleepy, so he wasn't cognizant, and so he made this mistake, and blah blah blah. And it ignores Donald Trump now literally falling asleep in his own cabinet meetings where people are praising him and all that. But anyway, this also includes things like libtard and, oh, I suppose you voted for Harris, and like all the different things they do that just are, different insults. And it's like 95% of MAGA retorts just fall under this umbrella of ad hominem attack. And anything that you say to attack a person rather than address their argument is an ad hominem attack. Ad hominem. I'm not even drinking. Ad hominem. It's a hard word to say. Say that 10 times fast. Ad hominem. Can't even say it 2 times fast. Anyway, that's the first one. That one is like very easy to address. I think everybody understands it, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that. The second one is, what about, and then just Bill Clinton, what about Hillary Clinton, what about Joe Biden, what about Kamala Harris? Every time you point out a criticism of Trump or Republican or whatever, there's a whataboutism, what about this guy? Why are you okay when he did that? And this is a fallacy called a whataboutism. The technique or practice of responding to an accusation or difficult question by making a counter conversation or raising a different issue. So like the one that they have been using lately is when you talk about the Epstein files, They're like, what about Bill Clinton? He flew on, the Lolita Express 27 times or whatever. And it's like, what about him? If Bill Clinton raped little girls, send him to prison. I'm not defending him. I don't see anybody. I have not seen a single prominent person stand up and say, we need to, keep this covered because of Bill Clinton. I haven't seen any Democrats. Like, there's all this rhetoric about, when have Democrats said that they don't want to release the Epstein files? They weren't trying to prevent the Epstein files from being released under Joe Biden. They were just under a court order to not release them. They're like, because the Maxwell case was still pending, or the Maxwell appeal was still pending. And yeah, I think both sides of the aisle do whataboutism. But I don't think that both sides of the aisle do them equally. And I think there's also a kind of a difference between whataboutism. Anyway, okay, if you say they do, but I'm not going to debate that because it's not really relevant. MAGAs do it. We both agree with that. So not like you're literally whataboutism right now. See, this is so. What about MAGAs? Use whataboutism? What about the Democrats when they do it? Okay, if they both do it, they both do it. It's still a logical fallacy. Whataboutism is like the classic whataboutism. But the whole Clinton in the Epstein files things is a classic whataboutism. Most of the times that you see Republicans using whataboutism, it's also a false equivalence. And I think that's like, nobody's defending Clinton. Nobody's saying that none of the Democrats are saying we don't want to release the files. Okay, now this one is a little, now we're going to get more complicated as we go through. The next one is, this thing is happening because of an untrue thing. Like, that's called an argument from a false premise, an argument where the conclusion is based on an untrue, unproven, or unjustified starting assumption. And a good example of that is the whole, illegals are voting, right? Like, you always hear so much about, like, from the America First people and from the what's the replacement theory, and Democrats are importing immigrants, and they're just trying to lie about immigrants coming in, or they're just letting the immigrants come in so that they can vote illegally. So the all right, I'm just going to display this comment here just so he can scratch his itch, but I'm not going to debate whether or not both sides whataboutism, because again, you're just whataboutism. And I don't want to get into a big long conversation about whether or not it's okay for both sides to do whatabout. It's not okay to do it with either side. That doesn't mean that both sides do it the same. So, but back to the illegals are voting thing. First of all, illegals aren't voting. There's a Heritage Foundation has done an exhaustive study going back like 45 years in every single election, not just presidential elections, not just federal elections, not even just actual like elections, including like primaries and stuff like that. And they've looked at every single case of any kind of voter fraud for the last 45 years. And in their study, they have identified only 77 convictions of people who are non-citizens voting. That's out of billions of actual votes. They've only gotten 77 cases of non-citizens voting. Of those 77, only 11 of them were undocumented. And of the 11 who were undocumented, not one of them would have been prevented with voter ID laws. But you have all of this stuff, like Joe Biden only won because of undocumented workers or undocumented immigrants. The election was stolen. Illegals were voting for Joe Biden. The fact is, illegals weren't voting. And also, the fact is, illegal is an adjective. Illegal is an adjective, not a noun. If you use illegals as a noun, you are a racist. People are not illegal. People can do things that are illegal, but people are not illegal. But all of this is done to gin up fear, to gin up hostility, to gin up support for your voter ID laws, which would not prevent a single undocumented immigrant from voting. Voter ID laws have absolutely no effect on illegal voting. Like, people need to understand that. And when you use this fake argument that, oh, well, what's keeping illegal people from voting? You want to know what's keeping illegal immigrants from voting? Number one, common sense. If you're here illegally, the last thing you want to do is draw attention to yourself by trying to vote illegally. Like, number two, voting illegally is like really, really hard. You have to, you would have to know that you could imposter somebody else, that person, you'd have to know their address. You'd have to be able to know that they're not going to vote. You'd have to be able to somehow secure way to register to vote as them. You'd have to register with your own address, probably. Like, you'd have to go through so many layers of things to where you could eventually get caught. So this is a great example of arguing from a false premise. And it's also a great example of an ad hominem attack. And this is like, they combine multiple fallacies sometimes. Nonsense, you are an idiot. Again, it's not nonsense. It's a fact. It's a Heritage Foundation study. And number two, that's an ad hominem attack. Why are you, because, and I'm telling you why. Why are you for it? It doesn't accomplish anything. Voter IDs do nothing. Why am I against it? Because one thing they do is, it's not just like people will say, oh, how are you going to, drive without an ID? As much as 15 to 20% of the population at any given time does not have a current ID, meaning their name has changed. Who gets changed? Who changes their names the most often? What classification of people changes their names the most often? Well, it'd be women, right? Because women get married. And when women get married, they often change their name. And when they change their name, they might not change their driver's license right away. They might not change their ID right away. And so they have to go to, get their voter ID changed after they get married. It's not like they're trying to vote illegally, but you're making them take this extra step, leap this extra hurdle in order to vote when it doesn't do anything. The voter ID laws are not designed to make sure that only people that people can only vote legally. Voter ID laws are designed so that you can dissuade certain groups of people from voting over other groups of people. And, you know, historically, it hasn't worked as well as they would want. But there's a reason that voter ID laws exist, and it's not to protect the election process. It's to keep certain groups from voting. It's to change the election outcomes. All right, so we've got all kinds of yelling going on here. Okay, why do I need an ID to buy cigarettes or alcohol, but don't need one for voter ID? I think I just answered that. You're dumb as rocks. Again, ad hominem tech. He cannot answer you intelligently, even though I answered it. So this is just denialism. Most people in places like New York don't drive because of mass transit. There's a lot of people that don't have driver's licenses, but do have state IDs. This is not so much, but there are some people that probably don't. I think it's like 1 to 2% of the population doesn't have any kind of photo ID at all. But it doesn't mean they're not born here. And for some people, it becomes like a poll tax. Like, you don't have your birth certificate, so you can't just go and get a voter ID. You have to get your birth certificate first. And that can take time and that can take money. So it becomes a poll tax. So it becomes something that's, fundamentally unconstitutional. Like, there's no, and again, it accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes nothing at all. There is no election that is that was changed by illegal voting. There are elections that have been changed by ballot stuffing. I believe we need to protect election integrity, but individuals voting illegally do not change the outcomes of elections. I think there are, in the Heritage Foundation database, I think it's like 2,000 some cases of actual voter fraud out of billions of votes, including primaries and everything over the course of the years. This is what I'm saying when, you need to have facts in order to support your conclusion. And so you got a lot of people on here very, very angry and saying that I am, not pointing out my case. The point is, you need to prove your premise. You need to prove that voter fraud is happening. You need to prove that illegal immigrants are voting. There's no proof of that. There are only, again, 11 cases where there are people who have been convicted of voter fraud who were undocumented. And of those, all 11 would have still been able to vote because they had fake IDs. They had fake passports and fake birth certificates. The very things that you need to get voter IDs, they had fakes. That's why they were allowed to vote. And then when it came out, they were fake. They were convicted and they were sent to jail. I don't see the need to deny millions of people the ability to vote because you're paranoid that one immigrant from El Salvador might vote illegally and out of billions of votes. So, yeah, I tried to be respectful. However, when you claim that using the word illegal as a noun is racist, I now know you are stupid. Okay, it is. Look it up in the dictionary. It is. It's an adjective. It's not a noun. When you use it as a noun, you are using it as a classification of people. And typically, when people are using it, they're not using it for the German that overstayed their tourist visa. So it is a racist. If it hurts your feelings that I say that's racist, then that's too bad. It doesn't mean it's not. See, illegals were caught voting, and so were dead people. No dead people were caught voting, and no illegal people were. This is just, you're just saying things. Again, 11 people who are undocumented have been convicted of voting according to the most exhaustive database there is. A database which, I might add, was established to prove that they were. We're not talking about some liberal group here. We're talking about the Heritage Foundation. Okay. ID requirement. Which they are, but not. There was no voter fraud exposed. Like, you keep, like, this, everything you're saying is wrong, and you have no evidence other than you're just saying it. The Latino call, I don't know who he is. I'm just saying that calling people illegals is racist. Okay, so anyway. Okay, you're leaving. You're such a bleeping joke. I live in Wisconsin. It's a joke. Okay. So good. Really gonna miss you. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think he left. I think he followed through on his promise. It is a race. Like, this is, I mean, I'm so glad that he jumped on here and kept repeating the same false premise. Again, I'm just going to say this one more time. 11 people have been convicted of voting who were here illegally in the last 45 years. That is a fact according to the most conservative database that there is on this very topic, which was set up to prove that people who are here voting were people who are here were voting illegally. Like this, they tried to prove it, and what they proved is that voter ID laws do not change voting outcomes. I have proven my point. The Heritage Foundation study. Look it up. The evidence is only 11 undocumented people have voted in the last 45 years. Only 11 undocumented people, have been convicted of voting in the last 45 years. That is evidence. That is a fact. Aggrievement is fashionable. I don't know. Anyway, so this is why communist boomer. I am neither communist nor a boomer. I am Gen X, dude. And I am not a communist. I have a feeling that, but this is what I mean. Again, ad hominem attack. That's what that is. Ad hominem attack. That's what they like. Almost everything they do is a resort to ad hominem attack. They are literally proving that they use these fallacies by arguing with me using these fallacies. Okay. I don't know that the person is a Latino, but I know that when Clarence Thomas, who is black, makes racist decrees from the bench, it's still racist even though he's black. The thing itself is racist. Doesn't matter if you're, a minority or not while you're doing it. Okay, I'm okay. Again, ad hominem attack, not just on me, but on the entire gay community by using the word gay as a slur. Trump is literally doing communist things such as having the government owning part of private companies like TikTok. Exactly. Okay. But I'm not using a whataboutism. I didn't say what about anything. Anyway, so we're going to go on to the next fallacy, which we're just going to get. Okay, so we're going to have more fun now. If we do thing, we can stop other thing. This is another one of their favorite fallacies. We can stop this if we do this. And that's called a non sequitur fallacy. And it's a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. And like the one we're hearing now, trying to stay current, is that bombing boats in the Caribbean stops fentanyl. There's a big problem with that. And that is the Caribbean boats don't have fentanyl. And we know they don't have fentanyl because fentanyl does not originate in Venezuela or Colombia or anything. They're Colombia originates with most of the cocaine, and some cocaine is trafficked through Venezuela, but most of that cocaine goes to Europe. And we're not talking about that anyway. But somehow, if we bomb those boats, we're like, that's the only way to stop fentanyl trafficking. 90% of the fentanyl trafficked into the United States comes from Mexico over the border through ports of entry, and it's smuggled by American citizens. That's over 90% of the fentanyl that comes into the United States comes in that way. That's number one. Number two, when you make it, this is the only way to stop this thing. What you do is you eliminate other solutions. You eliminate an actual conversation about it. And you make it so that this one thing that is the solution is not actually solving it, but it's the only thing you're doing. I did. Anyway. I wasn't talking to you. There was somebody else that said communism. Let me go back. This guy, I was talking to this guy. He called me a communist boomer. Okay. The show's not just about you. So when we make it about bombing boats, like we have reduced the conversation down to the only way to stop fentanyl is if we bomb boats in the Caribbean. But the conclusion doesn't follow the logic. The solution doesn't solve the problem at all. And that's why it's a non sequitur. It doesn't logically follow from the previous statement or statements. So if bombing boats in the Caribbean doesn't solve fentanyl, then why are we doing it? Doesn't most of the fentanyl originate in China, or can they make it over there? Most of the can't remember what it's called. There's certain substance that makes fentanyl, and it's made in China, but then they bring it into the United States through Mexico. So it originates in China, but it's kind of polished off in Mexico and then smuggled over the southern border. I think it's easier to get it into Mexico and then from Mexico into the United States than trying to get it straight from Mexico into the United States. I'm not sure on all the specifics of that, but I know you're right that most fentanyl originates in China. Okay. Okay, so we're all reconciled on the communist boomer thing. Okay, precursors. Okay, so got that one. Yeah, the chemicals to make fentanyl come from China to Mexico, and then it's made in Mexico, and then it's smuggled into the United States or something like that. But the important thing is it doesn't originate in Venezuela, and it's not on the Caribbean boats. So if you want to solve the fentanyl crisis, you don't bomb boats in the Caribbean. It has no effect on it. And there's other things like that, like going back to the, like voter ID laws. Like, if the problem doesn't exist, then you're not solving it by these voter ID laws or whatever. A lot of times especially like under Trump, both this time and last time, there's like, he comes up with a solution like a border wall. And then it's like that becomes the only way. I'd say like immigration, period. We all acknowledge there's issues with immigration, but we have had too many stupid debates on whether or not we need to call it a crisis, or, whether the border wall will stop everything, or whether we have open or closed borders. How about we actually just have a nuanced conversation about how to resolve the immigration issues we have? Like, kicking out all the undocumented migrants and all undocumented workers is actually really, really terrible for the economy. Like, that's a fact. Every single economist that will do any kind of in-depth study on this will tell you, and have told you, Wharton has said so. There's several other studies that have shown it's going to cause like a 6 to 10% decline in GDP over the next 10 years. Okay. So, bombing boats won't solve fentanyl, and we need to get away from these the non sequiturs. When they tell you that this thing will solve this thing, just call them out. That's a non sequitur. Okay. And this is related to it. There's two aspects to this, right? One is saying this will solve this when it's not actually the solution. And then there's also the single solution bias, which is a cognitive tendency where individuals or terms permanently commit to a particular solution or a class of solutions without thoroughly understanding the problem or evaluating other viable alternatives. So one is like saying it is a solution. Excuse me, reflex. One is it is a solution. The other is that it's saying it's the only solution. So we go from bombing boats in the Caribbean will solve the fentanyl crisis to bombing boats in the Caribbean is the only way to solve the fentanyl crisis. Right? So bombing boats don't actually stop any overdoses since they don't have fentanyl. But also, let's not ignore, fentanyl overdoses were already well on their way down. They've gone down 25% over the last 4 years. And that's because of things that happened, like an actual nuanced, complicated, multifaceted approach to a solution, including increased border security, including things like increased ability to detect fentanyl, equipment that detects fentanyl, or equipment that detects when people are crossing where there aren't guarded borders. Like, there are actual things that have actually been done to prevent fentanyl from being trafficked. And can't remember what it was, but there was a whole lot of fentanyl, like 400 million doses that were captured during Biden's presidency. And every time they would seize fentanyl, you'd have Republicans sitting there talking about that just proves that the borders are open. Like, somehow seizing the fentanyl meant that they were getting it through. Okay, so that was one thing. It was just border security actually helped catch fentanyl as they were smuggling it. Didn't even have to murder anybody to do it. The second thing is they did a lot to increase Naxaline and Narcan access, which is like the emergency, like take a shot if you're overdosing. And they made it much more accessible and much easier for people to get. And so that had an impact just in terms of, immediate medical help for people that were overdosing. The third thing is treatment and recovery expansion. Actually treating the disease of addiction reduces the demand aspect of things, which means less people are overdosing. If fewer people are taking the drug, fewer people are overdosing on the drug. It's kind of makes sense. And so it's not just a one single pronged bomb boats in the Caribbean means that there's no more fentanyl. It's not magic. And by the way, if you want to talk about narcotics too, I was doing some, like research on this today. All the boat bombings together, they've had no effect on the cocaine prices that are on the streets, which indicates that there's not like this big cutoff in supply. There's not, that's not actually accomplishing anything other than killing people. So, Darth, it is actually coming from China to Mexico. Why aren't Mexican port authorities ridiculously checking the shipments from China, or don't they care? And is there anything that's, I think, like this is what I'm talking about. I think that's a valid question. And I think that when we start locking into single solution biases, then we're not looking at other things that we can do. I think that maybe under both Biden and Trump, there has been some cooperation with Mexico to do this, to try and restrict it. I think that Biden accomplished it through diplomacy, and Trump accomplished it through threats. But I think, yeah, we can do things to reduce that by working with Mexico. And I mean, that's a valid point. Okay, Trump. It's become one of those things. And there's also like there's fentanyl has become like this kind of boogeyman drug, like where they have, somebody's in an emergency room and, like there's like a dose of fentanyl somewhere in the room and it's like 11 people die of an overdose or something. Like it's not as they make it seem like it's a lot more deadly than it is. And no, there aren't millions of people dying of it either. It's like, I think last year there were 75,000 overdose deaths overall, like including fentanyl and all other drugs. So I'm not entirely sure of this, but can drug sniffer dogs smell off fentanyl? I don't know. If so, can the USA train the Mexican drug sniffer dogs to actually? I don't know. But you know what? Maybe what they could do is whatever they have this new kind of detection stuff they're using at the border. Maybe they could share some of that detection stuff with Mexican, port authorities. Like, whether it's dogs or electronic equipment, like sharing and maybe they're already doing it. If you come back tomorrow, I'll take a look at some of these questions. I think they're valid questions. I'll look at it and bring it up tomorrow. I try to, like, especially when it's good questions, I always try to research and find out the answers for everybody. Okay. I made a typo here. So, but like this thing only happened because of Biden. Like you'll see a lot of these kinds of arguments. Like they'll just blame Biden for stuff. And that's called a scapegoating fallacy, and that's an informal logical fallacy where a person or group is unfairly blamed as the sole cause of a complex problem, often as a way to avoid responsibility or to deflect blame from the actual causes. And like a couple of examples are the Ukraine and the Gaza and the wars in Israel and or the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. Learn how to talk, Kelly. Like both of those wars go back centuries and have a complex geopolitical reason for it. Russia has always valued the Ukraine because of certain ports that give them warm water access that they don't have otherwise. And this goes back like 400 or 500 years. It's not like a new thing. Ukraine has both its own identity, but because of the overlap with Russia over the years and sometimes being conquered and not, it also has a strong Russian population with a Russian identity. The closest thing I can think of that, like maybe people would understand or might have some kind of understanding of is Ireland, where there's like both the Irish and the British and, the Protestants and the Lutherans. Although this doesn't so much have a religious component, but there is, or the Protestants and the Catholics, I'm sorry. But there's components to the Ukraine and Russia conflict that have a lot more to do with historical things that go back hundreds of years, and then there's things that started after the Cold War with treaties that were signed or not that weren't signed. Putin feels that he was ripped off and Russia was ripped off, and Ukraine was at the time the second largest nuclear power in the world, more than Russia. They had more nukes than Russia. And they gave up their nukes in order for protection from Russia. But there's all kinds of things that go on involving like other countries like NATO, and to make this all just about Biden is to ignore the history, and it's just overly scapegoating. It's a way to make it Biden's fault to get people to blame Biden for their own political purposes. The Ukraine war has nothing to do with Joe Biden. I'm just going to tell you, Russia did not invade Ukraine because Biden was president. They would have done the same thing if Trump was still president, unless Trump just, conceded Ukraine to them, which he's already trying to do anyway. It's an oversimplification, and it's also like just blaming the whole thing on Biden, which it's not his fault. Same thing with Hamas did not go into Israel on October 7th because Joe Biden was president. Joe Biden didn't let that happen. But, now we got like no new wars president sitting there trying to talk about invading Venezuela. But somehow Joe Biden started 2 wars that he had nothing to do with and which America didn't participate in. But now we're at war with cartels or something. And you see this a lot, like with inflation, with, jobs, with anytime that anything goes wrong in the last 5 years, it's all because of Biden, including stuff that happened while Trump was president. Somehow the inflation that was caused by Trump's tariffs are Joe Biden's fault. So I agree. Okay. So so anyway, that's the scapegoating fallacy. We've addressed that. You'll notice that a lot. You know, they love to blame Joe Biden for everything. Okay, so then the next thing. This one is this one just really grates me. This is like one of the guy that got all mad at me and left and stormed off because I said that it's racist to use racist terms. Uh he'd probably get really mad about this too. But like when they use a certain incident to prove that a certain group is bad, like with the one immigrant murdered the one girl in Georgia, and so therefore all immigrants were murderers, or the DC shooter was an immigrant, so we need to go and look at all these 19 countries and stop stop any immigration. We're going to put a freeze on all asylum, like, because one guy did one thing. And that's called a bigoted generalization fallacy, which is a kind of specific of what's called a hasty generalization fallacy that is rooted in prejudice. This occurs when someone draws a broad, unjustified conclusion about an entire group of people based on a small, unrepresentative, or biased sample, leading to the stereotypes and prejudice. So, like the DC shooter, there's been, of all the people that came over from Afghanistan, as far as we know, there's only been one that actually did anything like this, right? And he was, according to Pam Bondi, radicalized here. Whether he was actually radicalized or whether or not he just had mental health issues stemming from the fact that he helped murder his own people in Afghanistan might have had some long-term mental health repercussions for him, and then we as a nation couldn't take care of his mental health. But somehow everybody in Somalia is to blame. The way that Donald Trump talks about Somalia because of this incident, calling them garbage or whatever. It's just, now it's anybody that has immigrated in here and is darker than Stephen Miller is suddenly a murderer. This is called a bigoted generalization fallacy, and it's one that MAGAs love to use. It's like, you're just for murder now if you think that immigrants aren't terrible people. Oh, whoops, I forgot to change or update my thing there. My uh my DC shooter. But anyway, you got the, sorry, I forgot to update it in the slideshow, but I'll update it if you want to save that for later. The other thing, the next thing is I want to talk about is a complex thing is all because of one thing. You know, they'll talk about the immigration or whatever, and that's called a reduction fallacy, the logical error of oversimplifying a complex issue by reducing it to a single cause or component. And this one is, you know, like the example I'm using here is Biden's inflation. Like they talk about Biden's inflation and they just blame it all on stimulus spending, and not just stimulus spending in general. They all blame it on Biden's stimulus spending. They don't blame it on Trump's stimulus spending. Somehow Trump's stimulus spending was okay, but Biden's stimulus spending wasn't. When the reality is, if you look at any economic research on this, there are multiple causes of inflation. Even if you look at like the Heritage Foundation and conservative think tanks, they'll say at most 40% of it was because of stimulus spending. There were multiple causes of it. There was the global supply chain disruption and energy price shocks. Those were the two main things, actually. Those were both had more impact on it. And the global supply chain disruption is things that happened because of COVID, because you had like all these places that were shut down and couldn't produce things because they didn't want to die. And it's funny how we give Trump credit. We don't blame him, and we shouldn't blame him for the massive job losses during COVID. Like, that's fair. It's fair to not blame him for that. But it's also not fair to blame Joe Biden for the cascading inflation that came as a result of those same job reduction, not just nationally, but internationally. It took time to catch up. And like one big example is the computer chips. Because we had a chip shortage, there were fewer new cars sold. And because there were fewer new cars sold, the price for those went up. And because the price for those went up, people that were looking for cars and needed a car had to buy used cars. And so the price of used cars went up. Then another thing that happened was the energy price hikes due to the war in Ukraine. And that disrupted oil supplies in Europe, which made the price of oil go up, along with the fact that OPEC Plus had cut what's the word? They cut how much crude oil they were getting out of the ground. I can't remember the word right now. My brain is not working. But there was less oil as a result of that. And then there was less oil as a result of what happened in Ukraine. Meanwhile, in the US, domestic oil was actually going up. We were producing more oil even than we did under Trump. And under Trump, we had record highs. We were producing record oil amounts under Biden. And there was still not enough because you've got the whole world price, right? So we were exporting oil. We were exporting more oil than we have ever exported in our history because Europe needed oil and they were paying more for it. You might as well blame Joe Biden for capitalism. The international price of oil per barrel was up. And that raised the price of gas, and that raised the price of energy. Right? You can't blame that on Joe Biden. Then you had corporations that were like cooperating with each other that had, like 3 or 4 corporations which basically had a monopoly on certain products, and they were agreeing to raise their prices together because prices were already going up and because Joe Biden was being blamed for it. So you could like get more money and have somebody else blamed for it all in the same fell swoop. And there was stimulus spending. Stimulus spending did have an effect on prices. But you can't say that the inflation from stimulus spending, or that the inflation was caused by stimulus spending, and then not give Joe Biden credit for the stimulus that created the jobs. It's like they want to have it so that the jobs were just going to happen anyway, but the inflation wasn't. There is just a lot of dishonesty in Biden inflation. And by the way, both Biden and Trump signed stimulus bills. So making it all about Biden, there was a lot that went into inflation. And reducing it down to a single thing like, oh, Joe Biden signed the bill is just dumb. And if you ask any serious economist, they will tell you it is just dumb to do that. Okay. Okay, so all right, got some. We had pandemic response team stationed in China that would have contained the outbreak in Wuhan, but Trump disbanded them, bragging that he didn't want to pay people just to stand around. That is, I've really tried to, like look into that and see. I I have to wonder if there's like parallel universes where COVID never happened, or whether it was just, boy, dodge that bullet. Over 3 million people died and lasting worldwide economic troubles were created, all because of the reckless and ignorant the decision by Trump. And whether or not it was just the Wuhan virus, I will say we as a nation had the worst performance of COVID. We had the worst COVID performance. And a lot of that has to do with Trump. Even if it's just his, slamming masks and talking about how it was just the cold and diminishing all of that. And there are all kinds of studies that show that, counties where they had mask mandates had a lower mortality rate and had a more lower rate of COVID infections. There are studies when show that the more like the redder the county, the higher the mortality rate was. More people died of COVID. Um, like one study was about masks and the other was about who you voted for. Another study that showed that red states were less vaccinated, or red counties, red precincts were less vaccinated, and those had a higher mortality rate. Most people, like 99% of people that have died of COVID, weren't vaccinated. Whether it was before or after the vaccines doesn't really matter because they weren't vaccinated. Vaccinations save lives. It's not the president's job to control inflation. The Federal Reserve can try to control inflation. I don't like the Federal Reserve isn't really there to control inflation either, but it does try to control inflation. But yeah, you're right. I think that regardless who the president is, sometimes we put too much attention on the president in terms of inflation. The one place where I will make an exception is when you have tariffs, because when you have tariffs, that's literally designed to cause inflation. And so when you have a president unilaterally imposing tariffs and then inflation follows, you can pretty much blame that on the president. MAGA is a cult and a terrorist organization. Who sanctioned Russia and created the shortage in Europe? Well, you're talking about this in isolation. Who invaded Ukraine? Like, there was a reason that Russia was sanctioned. The overt corruption of today has been like Trump's corruption is unreal. He's made literally billions and billions and billions of dollars, like $11 billion off of the being president. Sweden didn't drink the COVID. I'm not going to debate that. This is actually what we're talking about right now is historical revisionism. There's no COVID Kool-Aid, and Sweden didn't have the lowest mortality, and there was like all kinds of the reason Sweden did better is they didn't need to be told. They wore masks without being told to wear masks because they just thought, I want to go exist in a society where I don't have to kill people. All right. So anyway, Trump's drill baby drill dropped the barrel price that ruined both Russia and Venezuela. Claro, didn't you ever listen to President? Don't look at the WHO studies. Okay, I don't know. This is what I'm talking about, historical revisionism. You've got somebody here that is just cherry picking data and trying to prove that COVID was a hoax or whatever. And ignoring the fact that like millions of people died of it. But the thing I wanted to mention as an example of historical revisionism is the Russia thing, where they try to act like Russia didn't actually interfere into the 2016 election and that it was all just something drummed up by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and it was all this way of trying to undermine Trump presidency in the first term, when even the Republican-led Senate investigation established that Russia interfered with the 2016 election and that the Trump campaign had over 100 contacts with Russians or intermediaries. Like, the Mueller report never absolved him the way he said it did. The Barr justification for it. And by the way, Mueller was appointed by Jeff Sessions, who was appointed by Donald Trump. The Democrats were not the ones that set the Mueller investigation into motion. The Democrats didn't start the Russia investigation. The Russian Senate that investigated was a Republican-led investigation. This idea that Russia was a Democratic hoax is wrong on both counts, because it was neither Democratic nor Russian, or nor a hoax. Russia interfered with the election. That's just a fact. And all the Russia stuff that you hear from Donald Trump doesn't change that. And you see this kind of revisionism when it comes to mask mandates, when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to COVID, when it comes to Russia and election interference, when it comes to January 6th, when it comes to, there are very fine people on both sides, to virtually every talking point. They will sit there and they will just shout and shout and shout the same ridiculous nonsense until you just walk away from the conversation, and they will pretend that they were proven right. But they were wrong on all of those. And they're still wrong on all of those. So, just gonna, thanks. That's the problem. You assume what I think I am. I just gave you 2 facts. Yeah, that's called cherry picking. You didn't give me just 2 facts. You didn't give me 2 facts that are like, what happened in 2014 has nothing to do with Joe Biden being the reason that Ukraine got invaded by Russia. You don't even understand what was happening in Ukraine at that time. Like, that's not even an honest representation of Ukraine or Ukrainian politics. Okay, so now we're down to hyperbole, or to ad hominem attacks. So, like I said, everything that MAGA argues is just one fallacy after another. And that actually brings me to my final point, which is like just the avalanche of nonsense. They build one fallacy after another, one lie after another, one cherry pick fact after another, and they just delude you with nonsense. And this is what's called a Gish-Gallop fallacy. And it's called a Gish-Gallop fallacy because there was a guy named Gish who was a creationist who would go around and he would talk about like creation theory. And he would just come out and he would do a stream of debunked talking points. There would be like 10 debunked talking points all in a row, like about this thing couldn't have evolved, and the earth was only 6,000 years old because of the moon dust, and like just all kinds of fabrication one after another. All kinds of fallacy and all kinds of disinformation one after another. And so he would say so many things that in the person he was debating's rebuttal time, they would not have a time to address all of the fallacies that he generated in like 3 minutes. Like, you can lie a lot faster than you can clarify the lies. And so the internet started, this was back in the 90s on Usenet and stuff. They started calling this a Gish gallop. Like, Gish would just gallop through all of these fallacies one after another. And this is what so much of MAGA is now. You talk to, you watch Mike Johnson give an interview or whatever. They'll just like add 11 different fallacies and lies all in like a 60-second blurb. Sometimes they can pack 5 lies into a 6-word sentence. And if you want a good example of a Gish Gallop fallacy, just listen to any Donald Trump speech. He will just compound lie after lie after lie after lie. So, all right. So here's some things. Okay, so you're a simpleton, ad hominem attack. LOL, you are full of crap, ad hominem attack. By going all gishing all over all the place. And you believe Harris, see, whataboutism. And the Dems are so honest, really, like what whataboutism? See what I mean? Like, all the things that I am talking about, the MAGAs in my comments are doing. Like, every single thing is not only, I don't just have representative arguments in my slideshow, I have representative arguments in my comment section. Like, everything. Like, they never take new information and absorb it and then go, okay, well, that makes sense, but what, and then come up with a rebuttal that's logical. What did Trump lie about? Are you serious? Okay, how about Russia is a hoax? How about COVID is a hoax? How about COVID is just the flu? How about the phone call was perfect? How about there are very fine people on both sides? Everything that Trump says is a lie. That's like saying, what circle is round? Like, there is nobody that has, they have documented 35,000 lies just in his first term. And his second term, he's gotten worse. Name something he's said that's true. That's the challenge. Name one honest talking point he has. And it's just, people just regurgitate his lies, and they just keep regurgitating his lies. And a lot of them just end up, you get MAGAs that believe everything he says. But it's just this avalanche of nonsense. It's a Gish Gallop of gibberish. And you can't even argue with it. Like, there is just too much nonsense to rebut one at a time. And so then you just end up blocking these people because you realize you're never going to get anywhere. And then they're like running victory laps around their stupidity. My wife's going to get mad at me because I said stupidity. So I retract stupidity. I'll say willful stupidity. So, okay, we got TDS at its finest, ad hominem attack. Both people on both sides are another lie by you, left nut jobs. Ad hominem attack plus the whataboutism. So anyway, this is my story, and I'm sticking with it. Again, if you want to, like, save the slideshow, feel free. I shared the link to it in the I don't know what you mean by play the whole video. I'm pretty sure I was here for the whole thing. I'm not sure what part of the video I missed. I'm the one that's recording it. MAGA is a fascist cult. I think that there's words with there's some things associated with cult where I wouldn't quite say it's a cult. I would definitely agree it's fascist, and I would agree it's cult-ish. But there are a few things that are quite not to cult standards, like people selling everything and joining a commune. But a shy of that, it's a cult. You are attacking us, yet you can't explain any of Harris's. Why do I see? This is whataboutism, and this is actually also another fallacy. It's called moving the goalposts. It doesn't matter if what Harris's policies are. It doesn't change that all of these things are still true. And this is not about Kamala Harris. Like, you need to get out of your binary thinking and just, is what I said true? Sure they are. What are you? Can you even admit when your party? I don't know if that is addressed at me or not. I don't know. Are you talking to me about whether I can admit when my party is lying? I will admit when my party is lying. But I don't know what that has to do with this. Like, if I can't admit when my party is lying, this is going back to, this is like a whataboutism once removed. Let's say that I can't. This is one of the things I love. I love when they do. They draw this parallel between what you're doing and what they're doing, and they say, okay, you have this double standard, and therefore you are wrong. But in order for me to be wrong by that double standard, you're the one that just said it is a double standard. So you are wrong also. So either we both have a double standard or neither of us has a double standard. You can't have it. I have a double standard, but you don't. Right. Harris and Biden is not the issue. Stay on topic. It's not a fallacy when you can't name one thing that he's done wrong. What, that Trump has done wrong? He tried to overthrow the country. You've made it when you've got haters. It's a backhanded compliment. Yeah, I think, and actually, like the MAGAs, thank you for joining the show and for commenting. I think you keep things lively and you keep it from becoming a bubble. And you do add to the conversation. You just don't add what you want to add. Okay, again, right now, Kamala Harris is irrelevant to the conversation which we are having. I agree with much of what she said. I do not agree with everything she proposed, and I could very much go through a lot of what her policies are that I agreed with. One example, she wanted to give home care workers, she wanted to for in-home work, in-home home health care. So like what was, I'm not using the right words, but like if you have what you call sandwich moms, right? Where they're taking care of parents and children at the same time. All right. And so then the parents would have to go to nursing homes. So rather than spend more money sending their parents to a nursing home, which neither the parents nor the mom wants, pay the mom with Medicare money to take care of her own parents. Like, just let her be the paid healthcare worker that, it's not, this is not a professional degree. She's not a nurse, but just somebody that's feeding the parents, bathing them, doing all that kind of stuff for parents that would otherwise have to go to a nursing home. That's a policy I think that a lot of people would agree with. And a lot of it doesn't just affect liberals or minorities or whatever. A lot of MAGAs, a lot of tradwives would have been really helped by this. So I definitely could advocate for Kamala Harris's policies, a lot of them. And I think she was a better solution than Donald Trump, but we're not talking about Kamala Harris right now. Do you understand that? We're not even talking about Donald Trump right now. We're talking about logic. And your logic is to deflect from the conversation, which is bad logic. Stick to what we are talking about, Todd. Sure not. You got to blame everything on the guy who just came into the office. No, I'm not blaming everything on the guy that just came into the office. I blame him for what he has done. You blame everything on the guy that just left office, and you blame him since the day he came into office. Again, I'm the one that's saying reductive fallacy is bad. You're saying things I have not said. I never said everything that's wrong with the country is Donald Trump's fault. I never said that. But you're not using history and facts. You're just saying things. Okay, it's bull blank logic. Find people on both sides. Yes, I watched the whole video several times. And even the clarifications of it have distorted things. What he was saying, if you really watch the video and you really watch what he was saying, is first he was talking about the people on the left that were protesting. Then he talked about the people on the right. And he said that some of those people were white supremacists. And then he, went on and he talked a bit more. And then he came back and he said, but there's very fine people on both sides. He had just spent all his time justifying the people on the right. When he said, but there are very fine people on both sides, he was actually calling back to the people on the left. So he was saying, hey, all the people on the right, all the white supremacist people, they're fine. Except for, like the white supremacist people. He says with a wink and a nod. Kind of like when he said, oh, go peacefully. But he was saying some of the people on the left, they were very fine people too. That's actually what he was saying. He was definitely justifying the people on the right. You watch the speech again. If federal laws haven't changed and Trump is following the federal laws, he's not following laws. There are, I think, 36% of the rulings from judges have been against him. That's the most in history. And judges are the ones that determine whether or not he's following the laws. You can't just say, oh, it's liberal judges. Like, he's literally not following the law. And that is literally the issue I have with him. Harris ran for president. What was her policy? I mean, this is, again, a deflection. I don't want to spend half an hour describing all of her policies, which are irrelevant to this. Okay. Yeah, no, it's just, it does not prove anything. I've actually discussed it quite a bit in this. And I've discussed policies he's done, which, for instance, have helped bring back jobs. I have discussed things he did, which helped cut overdoses down. So please actually think before you type. Okay. Yes, on January 6th, he absolutely tried to overthrow the country. If you're talking January 6th, he offered Capitol Police, which was rejected by, and he did not offer Capitol Police. Nancy Pelosi doesn't have the power to reject it. This has been a talking point which has been repeatedly debunked. And he sat there for 3 hours without calling in the National Guard. Okay, what's the topic of today then? The topic of today is MAGA fallacies. Have you not, There's a whole slideshow on it. Okay. No, it's not. She had. Okay, he's still trying to make it about Kamala Harris. Todd needs to get woke. She was charged with being the border czar, not borders are. Look what she did a great job. She wasn't charged with being the border czar. I mean, like, this is just another fake talking point. And what she was charged with doing is trying to reduce the number of immigrants that were coming over. And she did act from the Iron Triangle. And what she did do is she got private investors to invest in those countries so that there would be more job opportunities there, so that fewer people would be trying to leave. So in those countries where she did that, there were fewer people coming over here trying to claim asylum. So again, the problem is not what I am not saying. The problem is what you do not know. Stay black. Okay. I don't I don't know what that was. She was. No, she wasn't. Okay, the conversation is about MAGA fallacies, but and then this is, like, everything is, they just get, like, MAGAs, they get so panicky when you start stating facts. They can't actually address the thing that you're saying. They'll either just dig in and just repeat the same thing. Kamala Harris was never named a border czar. Like, that's a fact. You cannot establish that she was named border czar. You can't find Joe Biden saying she was a border czar. What you have is people on Fox News misrepresenting what happened and ignoring what she did. She was never in charge of the economy. I mean, like, just, they have it. Like, right now, is JD Vance in charge of the economy? Caregiver, yes. The caregiver. That's what I was trying to think of. The caregivers. She wanted to make them like, like trad moms that are taking care of their moms and their children. She wanted to be able to pay them for what they're doing so that she could alleviate financial concerns for the family, where that person is clearly doing a lot of work, and it would have saved the government money. That's the incredible thing, because that would have cost less money than sending them to a nursing home. Like, what? And this, to me, this was one of the things that she proposed that I thought should have been easily jumped on by both sides. Like, why would anybody be against that? Again, this is like one of those things where I think that what we need is a really exhaustive discussion about immigration policy. Because I also think that using undocumented workers as cheap labor, I don't think, like, slave labor is a bit of a stretch. They make about, like a few less dollars than Americans, and that does lower the price for American labor on those, low income jobs. So I think that we need to, but there's also real reasons that they're hired, and it's not just because they're cheaper. It's because to hire them legally, there just aren't Americans that want that. To hire them legally costs about $7,000 more per worker because of the hoops you have to go through to get the visa. I think it's called an H-2B visa. To get them over here, you have to spend, like, all kinds of money on transportation, recruiting. You have to pay for their lodging and their food and pay all this stuff. So it ends up being $7,000 per worker. So if you've got a farm and you're barely getting by at like $40,000, $50,000 a year, and you have 10 workers, and you're going to add $70,000 a season to your crop, well, you're going to just start losing money, and then you're going to start losing your farm. So we need policy adjustments to where people can hire undocumented workers and pay them a reasonable amount legally. Like we need to I shouldn't even say undocumented workers. We need to change what undocumented worker even means. We need to make it easier for people to hire immigrants. Democrat logic is this is like kind of a self-owning thing, right? This is an ad hominem attack talking about how our logic is tainted. Get it together, Tim. I don't know who's done what to this country. This is like this is one of Donald Trump's favorite things. Oh, look what he's done to this country. What has he done? Like, there is no substance to a MAGA. If you take away all of their fallacies and just gibberish, there's nothing left. You keep talking crap about him. I've literally talked about her policy repeatedly. I've mentioned a few things about her policy, and you just keep denying that I said anything. And again, the conversation we're having right now is about fallacies. This is deflection. This is every time you bring up Kamala Harris, you are being fallacious. And you got anything of. See, this is just an ad hominem attack. We are, I don't know what, you can't fix twisted logic. You're saying, I don't know who's saying stupid bleep, but it's, I mean, whoever it is, that's an ad hominem attack. Like whoever you're saying that to. Okay, get to the point. What are you? I'm like an hour and a half into this, dude. I already went through the slideshow. Like the point has already been made. I'm just reading through and replying to comments now. Okay, we did watch it. Okay, and yet here you are just saying, you know, starting with the first one, which was ad hominem attacks, and all you've got is ad hominem attacks. Okay, Rachel Maddow, glasses don't make you smart. No, they make me be able to read. They're reading glasses. Like, I can read your comment because I have them on. That's not what he said. I don't know what. Okay, anyway. He's just a lot of F words and insults. So it's gonna skip over that. Okay. Just historical revisionism, ad hominem attacks, whataboutism, and like just this is Gish Gallop right here. This is what I mean. Like he didn't say anything wrong. He did. He didn't incite anything. He did. The left has said plenty of hateful things. I don't even know what hateful thing. Like they didn't cause January 6th, and he never called out by the left or news media, and never get called out by the left. They never caused a riot to go have 2,000 people wiping their crap on the walls and trying to stop the transfer of power. He was indicted 84 times. He's been convicted of 34 felonies. There is like, yes, he has broken laws. He said make it peaceful one time. He said fight 20 times. He sat there and watched the whole things on Fox News, had people pleading with him, even his own family pleading with him to stop it, and he didn't pick up the phone. No, he wanted that to happen. Okay, so I'm just going through. There's a whole bunch of just like they're really getting hysterical here in the comment section. There hasn't looking for this one. Somebody's saying kick Steve out of here. He's definitely getting close. You seriously need to stop watching CNN, MSNBC. So this is just another whataboutism, like this denialism. Like this is another thing they like to do is they like to just blame it on CNN or MSNBC or whatever. You're watching too much Fox News. Like my information does not come. I don't watch CNN at all. I do watch MS Now, which is now what it's called. but I get like 5% of my information from that. I actually read. It's called reading. It's when you like read and you absorb information and you research. Like I didn't get this slideshow from MSNBC. I wrote it. She was not the border czar. I know that Fox News and Republicans love to tell you she was the border. She was. There was never a thing called the border czar. It's already been a program. You're so lost. I'd like to feel bad for you, but you can't if you choose to not. So now she feels bad for me because, like, I don't even know what you're. Yeah. Heather and Steve, man, you guys should get married. You would love each other. So I'm looking to see if there's anything of substance, but all it is just proof of why I made this slideshow. Gibberish, do your research. I don't even like this is like what is it's just like crazy talk. Boy, Heather is really, really angry. Have you ever heard of Delta 8, Heather? I'd suggest it. Okay, now I got like this guy is calling me an ass clown. He's still calling me an ass clown. Democrats. See, this is what I mean. Like I'm just clicking through these. Like, okay, here I love when MAGA uses terms they don't understand, for example. Okay, got Trump baby. At least he can talk. Socialism, communism. Yeah, when they call people socialist, communist, Democrat, liberal, they like confuse everything. They don't even know what the words they're using mean. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Even the MAGAs that just, I don't know, like seriously, guys, research. Go and look up, Kamala Harris. Was she a border czar? Ask Grok. Ask Claude. Ask ChatGPT. Was she ever officially designated a border czar? Do it. See what happens. So Todd is all for Vance or Tulsi. Okay. I'm sure that, both have called Trump a Nazi or compared him to Hitler. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later or tomorrow, I guess. Hope you have a nice rest of your day.